Welcome to 1 Million Cups Kansas City. The mission of 1 Million Cups is to lower the barrier of access to education, resources, and connection for all types of new and aspiring entrepreneurs throughout the United States. 1 Million Cup communities gather across the country every Wednesday to share presentations and make authentic connections. 1 Million Cup events are free, open to the public, and always have coffee.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Great to see everybody here. Thank you for coming out. If you could please go ahead and scan the QR code up on the presentation, or do the one on the back of the chairs. I had a few people tell me that the one on the presentation didn't work for them. So if you could, it was user error. Okay, knowing you, I didn't think that was possible. So I just assumed. Okay, so first off, let's give a big thank you to the Kauffman Foundation for this beautiful room that they give us, for the coffee and the cookies. And also, while we're at it, let's give a big round of applause. We have a couple people here from last week from Global Ties. So let's give them a round of applause for being here. If you guys weren't able to come, one of the great things about having the Kauffman Foundation sponsor us is that we get to do big events like that, where they provide breakfast for everybody. We had, what do we have, 5 presenters, 6 presenters? Yeah, 5 presenters. So like we're also, other than like, we don't have to worry about the coffee and cookies every single week, we're also able to do big events like that, thanks to the Kauffman Foundation. And so a little bit about the Kauffman Foundation. Really, what they do is really try to help all people and create opportunities for all people, mostly through entrepreneurship and through education. And so they started 1 Million Cups in 2012. And so just allowing people to have opportunities through entrepreneurship, through education, it's really one of the main pillars of 1 Million Cups as well. So who here in this room hasn't been to 1 Million Cups before? So Tula's going to come around and he is going to drop off. What do we have? Do we have the notebooks for him? We have something for you. Yes. So go ahead and keep your hand raised and Google will come over and drop those off. So the mission at 1 Million Cups is to lower the barrier of access to education, resources, and connection for all types of entrepreneurs throughout the United States. And there really are 2 pillars to it. One of it is what we do, which is just allow a platform for entrepreneurs to come and speak. The second pillar is really kind of where you guys come in and is the most important piece, which allows for the education for the entrepreneurs through your guys' questions, as well as connections afterwards through other local entrepreneurs. And then also just like the connections that they make and connecting them to other people throughout this community. So this is a national program. There are over 100 1 Million Cups throughout the U.S. And starting this year, we started 1 Million Cups in Espanol, and I believe that there are up to 6 of those communities right now. So this is designed to educate, engage, and to connect with entrepreneurs, and we do that through allowing them to come up and give a 6-minute presentation. And we always tell them through the presentation, it really is try to tell your story about who you are as an entrepreneur, about where your company is at. And then we have the 20-minute Q&A, which, like I said, that's really the most important part of this. It allows the entrepreneurs to connect with all of you guys, to get ideas from the audience, from other people who have been in their shoes, who have started companies, and kind of know what they're going through and kind of say, well, when I was in this similar situation, here's what worked for me, here's what didn't. And so we always say authentic connections and stories and presentations. And that just helps with like the 20-minute Q&A of allowing people to give the best feedback possible. So it's not somebody up here speaking for 20 minutes and saying, okay, thank you very much, and leaving. We want to have stories so they can tell you guys can kind of know where they are as a company. And then the authentic connections usually follow from there. If you are an organizer, go ahead and raise your hand. We have 7 of them. I think we have so like I said earlier, this is organizer-led, which is why having the Kauffman Foundation provide everything that they do is such a huge benefit to us. And also, if you want to become an organizer or are interested, you can come speak to any of us but you can also scan this QR code on the screen and apply. We're always looking for new people. We're always kind of filtering through changing jobs. So we are always looking for new people. And also while I'm here, the applications for opening up new organizations and new communities for 1 million cups is also open and available. So if you know anybody, or if you guys know any other communities that don't have 1 million cups today, encourage somebody in that community to apply. And then they can bring this benefit to the entrepreneurs in their local communities as well. So the guiding principles, and most of this I've been through, is basically your goal is just to support the entrepreneurs. Do what you guys do every week, offer insightful feedback, offer connections, offer your help. And then the focus is on curiosity over criticism, collaboration over critique, and actionable and kind feedback. And for all of you that are new today, I think you'll see, like, as we go through the 20-minute Q&A, this is a very, very special room. And I'm always kind of blown away with how well the Q&A goes. And then also we keep this room open for about an hour after this to allow for more of those authentic connections as well. And both of those, the Q&A and then like the 30 minutes to an hour afterwards, are what I think is some of the most powerful things that we do at 1 Million Cups. Okay, so right now, go ahead and silence your phones. We're going to bring up the presenter, and also while you have your phones out and silence it, if you haven't, go ahead and sign in with that QR code. All right, and let's welcome Sarah up here. She presents her.
My name is Sarah Snyder, and let's see if this clicker works. Nope, wrong way. We were joking this morning that it takes like 20 minutes to figure out how to use the clicker and the microphone and to do both at the same time, which is probably the case for me. But I'm a continuity strategist, and I have been in this space now for about 4.5 years. My husband and I got started together, and we come from very different backgrounds. Why is it turning off?
There you go. Bottom at the bottom, the button. There you go.
There we go. There he is. Can you hear me okay? I feel like I can. Okay. So my husband and I come from very different backgrounds. He is Chinese, and his family went through the Cultural Revolution. I grew up in Papua New Guinea, and my parents were missionaries. But we had one thing in common when it came to money, which was we actually didn't really know what to do with it. Outside of save, try not to waste it, be responsible. But besides that, we really didn't know. And so what we did is when we finally sat down together to look at our own financial plan, what we realized was we weren't alone in this. And for most people, it's not because they don't care, but it's because it's really hard. Nobody has sat down with them and to walk them through how do you think things through, kind of like in the big overarching picture. How do you tie the different pieces together? Because what we do now, what I do now, is thinking through the long-term continuity of well-being for both business owners and individuals and their families when things change, whether that's in life or in business. And that is why I got into this space, recognizing that we weren't alone. This is a real need. And what I get to do is I get to help people to think through what is it that takes them forward. And so for most people, and many business owners actually included, it is so easy to focus on what's right now in front of me. Now that might be cash flow, that might be growth. It's what's urgent and right now in front of me. But that by itself, and a lot of people are doing great in some of the pieces of what they're doing. But it's the pieces fitting together into an overarching structure that provides stability, and it takes both. It really takes both. I like to think of this as the soil and the seed. You can see here on the left-hand side, those areas such as that cash flow, which is then allowing those operations to continue, or the liquidity that supports and manages disruption, or debt that's at a manageable level if things are under pressure. Soil, stable, making sure that things can continue where they are right now. The right-hand side are those areas that allow things to continue forward. Is making sure that that protection in place and is attached to the correct individuals or the correct plan. It's making sure that wealth exists beyond the business. It is thinking through how is that succession piece? How do you do the handoff, the transfer, the succession? And so kind of practically what this can look like is thinking through, okay, questions such as, if something were to happen to my key person, where is the capital coming from to fund that transition or that transfer? If something were to happen to the business owner, You know, what is in place to make sure that there's continuity for his family and for his business? And if the business is really part of that long-term plan, often you hear like, this is my retirement plan. But what's in place then to make sure that happens? It's not just an assumption. And so what we'll do is we'll sit down and we'll talk through these questions. We'll put in place the structures so that those are not just theory, but they're actually kind of implemented practical kind of strategies. And I've been in business for about 4.5 years now, as I've mentioned, a little bit about my background. It's about 4.5 years in this business. Largely, I've been actually working with individuals and families. Right now, I'm intentionally transitioning to work with business owners as well. Business owners who are in that space, often the sandwich generation, where there's responsibility for family members, kids and or parents, employees, you know, their own needs as well. And so there's a lot of responsibility. And my model, the business model is such that I actually get paid from getting people into a better position. And so we work with the best of the best. I work with a network of financial companies around the United States. They're all top rated, which means that I'm not actually pushing a particular company or product. What I get to say is, this is what my client needs. These are their needs and goals. And so therefore, who's the best for them right now? Which strategies are the best for them right now? Now let's represent them to that company so that we get them in a better place. I'm incentivized to making sure that there's follow through and that things happen and that they're in a better place than we talked about, because that's how I get it. Do I need to actually point here? Probably. Why is it not moving on? There we go. Okay. Now for me, the biggest challenge is when I'm talking with people, they resonate. The conversations can be really, really solid. And there can be a deep, oh, that's what that is. Yes, I see that is missing. But action can get delayed because this is so important, but it's not often very urgent. Right back there. And hit the wrong button again. Okay. You know what? If I just push over here and stand here, it's so much easier. Okay, here we go. So important but not urgent. So I want to share with you a few of the different things I've tried. And what I've tried is I've tried education. So workshops, kind of simple frameworks like the one I just shared with you, the soil and the seed concept. And this has involved a monthly workshop I'm co-hosting right now and writing regularly and consistently. And then I've been working on building relationships. So those relationships are geared around referrals, strategic referral partnerships, communities such as People for People is a nationwide fractional HR organization, and then have just started to host a table at the Bid and Build event here in Kansas City, which just got started, and then started to get connected with as well the North Kansas Coffee Connect, as well as this room here of incredible business owners. One-on-one conversations. And when I'm sitting down with the right people, those are going great. Real awareness and understanding, at least it seems to me there's a real awareness and understanding of the relevance of this topic. And the last thing of my approach is I've been very intentional about not wanting to use fear or pressure as a tactic. I want people to be able to make decisions out of clarity, not out of stress. What's happened is that is the pattern that I'm seeing. There can be real strong engagement, and I'm at 6 minutes, but then things fall through. The momentum gets slowed down, and then it's just like, well, where next? So strong interest, follow through stalls, momentum fades. So the question I have for you today, this is the last piece here, but my question for you today is, how do you create action around something that's important but not urgent without using fear and pressure? And I would really value, I know you've got such different backgrounds here, really value your own experiences. Thank you for letting me share with you today.
Thank you, Sarah. Great job. If you don't mind standing behind here, we'll use that microphone, and then we will also pass around microphones for people that have questions.
Good for you to stand here and be vulnerable. I applaud you.
Thank you.
My name's Ken, and what I have learned in sales is there needs to be pain in your prospect and you need to understand what that pain is, so that they'll move. And I'm not sure that you are doing an adequate job understanding their pain. You've got you have, in my opinion, you sort of have a solution in need of a problem. So the better you can understand their pain, I think the more effective your pitch will be. And I love what you're doing, and I want to meet you after that.
Thank you. That's really good. Thank you.
Sarah, over here. Good presentation, thank you. Vulnerable, that's a good word. I just want to know, are you a fiduciary?
In the sense that I have to put my clients' needs first, yes.
Okay.
And so we do have the ongoing financial education and requirements about interest of your clients. So in that sense of the word, yes.
So what you do is a little twist on a wealth advisor.
It is.
Okay.
It
Thank you.
is. Yeah.
I want to go off of what he was saying in that in the sales process, yeah, the fear and pressure are the things that you bring as the salesman to the situation to try to, you trying to get them to make the decision to go forward with something that's good for them. When was the last time a little kid wanted to eat his oatmeal?
Broccoli, right?
Broccoli, yeah, but so you gotta get something to them that they can relate to. And what he said about the pain, that's you finding their thing so that they're motivated rather than trying to put fear and pressure on them. They both are two sides of a coin, but one is what you're trying, you need to do this now so that you can, and the other one is getting them to acknowledge what would or is their pain enough that they're motivated to do it without you having to put that fear and pressure there.
That's good.
I think it's trying to answer your question.
That's really good. Yeah.
Hi there. Good morning, Sarah. I'm Ethar.
There you are.
Thanks so much for sharing. I think without using fear or pressure, in terms of behavior change, it would be really good to think through the value proposition. Like, what value are you bringing and why should I act now versus 3 years later? I think that could be really key. But then also what makes you different. So if you're like a financial, advisor, but different, I would want to know why I should work with you rather than another financial advisor. So I think clarifying the benefit, that value proposition, and then also what makes you, why you're different and why someone should choose you versus, someone else. So thank you. This is great.
Thank you for your presentation. And following on from that last question, how do you find your customers? Obviously you're saying that they're not acting in the way that you would like them to be acting, but are you actually talking to the right types of customers who need your service?
That's a really good question. And so in this there are a couple different ways I've been finding clients, and that has been through others who are sending them my way, so referrals. And referrals might come from people I've worked with, or it might come from other financial professionals who are either have too much on their plate or are learning and they want to watch what I'm doing and work with me. And then it's come through also reaching out to my own network and connecting with people that I've known throughout the years, especially when I was first starting. I'm starting a new business here, and this is what I'm doing. And that actually was effective for a while. Also, I'm working through social media and LinkedIn. I'm attending and connecting with a lot of virtual online spaces. So I have found clients through other types of online virtual networking groups. And, but I have, the struggle in part is to be able to, that ideal kind of business owner niche is where I'm transitioning into now. Kind of that sandwich generation where they've got to think through how do you take care of elderly parents? How do you make sure your kids are going to be okay? Do we have enough saved for ourselves personally? If we've got key people in our business, how do we make sure that if something happens to them, our business can continue? Do we have the proper funding to back that buy-sell agreement? And I'm having a hard time in my networking. I've been networking with other types of people who are serving those business owners. But what I'll hear is things like, this is great, this is important, but when I'm talking with them, right, this topic doesn't come up. Or maybe it comes up, but my priority is what my business is rather than making an introduction to somebody else. Or this is really, really, really good, but then completely ghosting me. I've had those as well. And so I've managed to connect and work with some of the smaller business owners where this is really important and needed. But sometimes I think when we're still a little bit smaller, what's urgent becomes even more tyrannical in many ways. And so it's hard to think through and have the space to put in place some of these bigger structures. And so what I would love to be able to do is how do I get the introduction to those, or the connection, or the relationship in that space where we've had the place that I've built enough right now that I cannot afford to lose it. Because a lot of what I do is around that protection piece. I can't afford to lose my key people. I can't afford to lose my business. This is my retirement. I need to think through the funding piece. And so that's, I've not really gotten in front of kind of hardly any of that group of people. Yeah.
Jeremy here. Great presentation. I think going back to the sales aspect of it, of not using fear or pressure, your lucky in a sense is you have the greatest fear, which is money. The greatest fear is the lack thereof.
Right.
So if you disguise it that you're not the fear, the money is the fear, you're the solution. And it's uncomfortable to push on that pain, but when you do, that's how they remember you. They'll remember you and say, she brought up the point that, yeah, I can't lose this or X or Y. And so you're the solution. So it's disguising that fear or pressure to make you seem like the light at the end of the tunnel.
That's good.
Samuel, and great presentation, Sarah. I was thinking about, essentially you're working with family businesses, intergenerational family business. I think is sort of part of the story here. It may not be exclusively the story. And last week, actually, there was one presenter from the YLAI group fellows where she's a third generation farmer from, there you go. Hey, what's up? So this is your story. You can rock with it, better than I can. Tell it better than I can. But essentially, sort of what that reminds me of, and I know family businesses, and I've seen it and studied it a little bit, is that I think your angle could be at that next generation, because that's a non-fear pressure approach that you can create community around to help them sort of start that conversation, because they're looking forward into the future and are also grappling with the same issues from a different angle that the person who's doing succession is. And that's how to take the reins, how to upskill, how to understand, all that's required, and also that interpersonal component between the family member and themselves. So if you're able to sort of, and they're probably going to be more open and also have the time, and sometimes, make the time maybe to engage in a way that can then be brought back into the business. And by you supporting them, that'll filter up to the business owner and then help engage in sort of your services.
That's really good.
My name is Brandon. The first thing that stood out to me was in this slide, it says, how do I create action around something important but not urgent? I almost encourage you to kind of reframe that as like, man, if you are heavily on the side of the risk mitigation, risk management side of things, like, man, that is urgent. There is some urgency behind that of, hey, what would happen if I don't get this set up? Tomorrow's never promised. Things just happen. So being able to almost reframe that mindset around, building in some kind of urgency. And even when coming from a financial professional background, when I would set the meeting, I would always set kind of the expectation of action. Hey, if we understand that, things are really aligned and the conversation goes well, we'll make sure we understand what it looks like to take the next couple of steps. But just kind of leading them along. But yeah, what everybody said was great. But I just want to encourage you to kind of reframe that mentality around, man, this has some urgency behind it, and step into that.
Yeah, no, that's great. In fact, I think you're 100% right. Like I've seen families where they've lost 3/4 of the family in a car accident. And now the family is fighting for the last kid because they want the payout from it. Like,
So I have a recommendation. So we talked earlier, I do a little bit, not at all what you do, but kind of complimentary. And so we use the Lafayette 535 Insights. It's a really, really cool report that comes out every single year on all 50 states. Have you ever seen it?
I have not.
It's really cool. I just emailed it to you, but it goes over 3 areas, affordable housing, employee ownership, and workers' benefits. And it says exactly how that state ranks in those areas. It gives a lot of really cool data. So maybe around like social media strategy or something like that, just like conveying passively, you know, what is the urgency? What are other states doing? How are they leveling up their businesses? I'm a 5th generation contractor, very reluctantly. I'm holding it as long as I can to pass it to my son, because I know that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to swing a hammer though. So, understanding what I'm able to do to secure that, and everything that I want to do is not what my parents have planned. And so, you know, they kept money in the mattress, right? So really getting out of those norms and switching things into a more like resilient business structure. I do that for other people, but it's been really hard for the construction company. And so I don't know if that, I don't know, it's Kansas thing. I don't know if it's a Black people thing. I don't know what it is, but culturally it's felt kind of interesting just watching people navigate the spaces. So yeah, that's my feedback for Lafayette 535 and then my personal experience.
Can you expand on that a little bit in terms of navigating those spaces? Like those, what are those spaces?
Yeah, so having conversations with wealth advisors,
Okay.
or looking at succession planning.
Yeah.
Truly, how do we transfer the business in a way that they are comfortable with?
Yeah.
The financial landscape looks a lot different than it did when my 78-year-old dad was in the business. But now that he's not, what are the things that did exist then that we can use to transition over to some of these new strategies? It was very black and white. But now there's a lot of gray. There's a lot of opportunity in between.
Yeah.
So that's where I've struggled the most communicating to them. So I think maybe you're not even getting stuck in like a sales gap. It could just be how comfortable am I with having that financial conversation? How well is it received by the rest of my family?
Yeah.
Sort of perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, one last question.
Okay, what I heard you say was, you have enough people that you don't want to lose them, right? This business. So the answer to your, one of the answers to your question is to create more value than you're asking for in finance from the people. And the way I had found that value in my business, and we talked before, and you know what that is, was to take the people that I had, and this was sales advice from another mentor, and ask them, why did you buy from me? That one question. And you'll see the same answer will come up over and over. Okay. And what happens then is when you put that in your presentation, it'll trigger other people, just like that. And you don't have to pressure them. And that's what I've incorporated that in the moment. And also when I was with Terminus, I did the same thing. Actually, sometimes I got to the point where that got to be so good, those answers, they stopped me and asked me to buy.
Nice.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So really all you want to add more value than you're asking in front. And you already have the answers from those people. And don't be afraid to ask them. They would love to tell you. They would love, well, that's pretty neat. Nobody that sells anything, let me ask me. I think they spend my money and run. Thank you for asking me about my, and then we'll give some real good answers. Okay?
Thank you.
And that should take it right through.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all so much. That was fantastic feedback. So, Sarah, we have one more question for you. That is, what can we as a 1 Million Cups community do to help you?
This was so helpful today. Thank you for your feedback and continuing to give feedback. I'm not here every week, but I'm going to try to be here quite often throughout the month. And so, you know, two, maybe 3 times in a month is my goal. And so come talk to me. If there are people I should be talking to, I would love love those introductions and connections. And I think that's the two things, right? Ongoing feedback and let me know who I should be talking to. And I look forward to continuing to get to know you more, what you're doing, because it seems to me this is a space where everyone can win together. And so.
Thank you. All right, everybody, let's welcome Jacob from Altigad.
Can you hear me okay? I'm gonna hide behind the podium for my notes. So my name is Jacob Allen Freitag, and I am the founder of Altigad. And like any good presentation, I'm going to start with a slight exercise. And I want you to imagine you're on your way to work and you're running a little bit late and your maintenance light comes on. So I want you to raise your hand if you're the type of person who's going to pull over and find out what's going on before you go into work. That makes sense. So that is not a character flaw. That's a common psychological phenomenon called temporal displacement, and we can just call it procrastination. So that actually doesn't go away at organizational scale. It amplifies. So now, how many companies or organizations do you think are really taking the time to find out what's actually happening when they know something's going wrong? We actually know the answer to that. The global insurance industry is worth $7 trillion or collects $7 trillion in premiums every year. The entire industry exists because of the guarantee that as a whole, we will not spend the money today to prevent tomorrow's forest fire, tomorrow's recall, or tomorrow's mortality rate. We have always lived that way. The difference now is pace. Technologies can reshape the economy, and previously things like steam have taken over 80 years to be adopted when disruption was dispersed. But now, with the rate of change and AI and other technologies being adopted too, that has changed. So the maintenance window is now closed, and every new and inconvenient iOS update that changes the layout, every technology and population drift that reshapes the workforce, that's disruption, and it's not just an event anymore, it's ongoing. I founded Altigad because our modern pace doesn't address these problems at the rate of which they are occurring, and that's the gap I choose not to ignore. I'm not saying the sky is falling, I'm saying that things have changed and our systems have not. So what do I do in practice? Every engagement is obviously going to start with data and operational context. This can be done in a variety of forms, and it's not domain specific. It can be architecting programs or operating procedures, developing dashboards and analytical tools, as well as embedded engagements such as chief of staff or strategic execution rules. So what makes my work different is I don't come with frameworks, and I believe that every system contains the intelligence needed to improve it, but someone has to be in the room to find it. So what this looks like in practice is I've witnessed deferred maintenance at many scales. This can show up as things like siloed departments, absent succession plans, fragmented data dictionaries, or single vendor dependencies. At a macro level, I've spent months analyzing federal STEM program initiatives, filing open records requests, speaking with program officers, and finding out that two programs under one department don't share data, even though they have the same exact goals, hundreds of millions of dollars, and neither program can tell you if a single student actually went and got a STEM degree or even went to the workforce. At a smaller level, that's working through an organization across departments, unlocking marketing material for the BD team, surfacing client sentiment latencies, and discovering that the head of innovation and the director of operations are both working on AI initiatives 3 doors down from each other, and they have never had a conversation about it. These two engagements look like completely different job descriptions. However, they're just the same pattern at different scales. So the biggest challenge this work for me currently would be access and trust. You can't sell trust on paper, and you have to be in the right rooms at the right time before the fires happen in front of the people that are skeptical about your work, and they don't even know they might need your help.
There's a lot of parallels here. So what I've tried is I've worked with executive headhunters. I've worked with my mentors, and they all say my work is good, but the work at an organizational level requires a specific niche. I've repositioned my entire branding as just business intelligence, and I've landed plenty of contracts, but it narrows the scope of work I would like to do. And I've executed the work itself with great outcomes. And again, because it's cross-domain, everyone doesn't see the parallels between how it affects what they're doing and where they're going. So what I've learned is that when I get visibility in the right room, I'm able to succeed. A former 8-week engagement, I just asked to engage a director, and within 2 weeks, I was answering directly to the CCO. When I'm able to show my work in a specific domain, people recognize it, and actually a lot of the advisors that I have on my board are people I've worked with previously who are proud of my work and wanted to have their name associated with mine. So with that credibility vehicle and direct presence, I'm able to show the work that I do has value, but it's not something you can just, thank you. It's not something you can just show on paper or through a resume. So we've kind of already went through some of these, but specifically for this type of work, my questions would be, how do we fund anticipation before there's anything tangible to respond to? And then kind of where are the critical conversations taking place and how do I get into those rooms and earn a seat at the table? Thank you.
Great job, Jacob. Now we're going to open up for questions.
Hey, great presentation. Mine's Scott. My question to you is, have you looked into what TechForce is doing or any of that piece from the government perspective of the new initiative launched and how it's kind of showing this, like a little bit of this model for the government to then update all their systems and go to all those new formats? Have you been involved with any of that stuff or seen any of that?
I've dipped my toes in it. Yes, a lot of the work, particularly from like the federal STEM initiatives, is all kind of, they want systems thinking and they want people to do cross-domain programming and all of the complicated stuff of tying these pieces together. But the bottleneck is a lot of the funding in the RFPs is still very narrowed and hard to get into. So I'll write that down and like look for that specifically, but.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time understanding honestly what it is you do, if I'm being honest. I kind of get the gist of it. There's not that you didn't do a great job explaining it. It was just a little bit over my head. So I'm gonna be honest with you. But there's like this gap between our reaction to things and when things happen, and with the evolution of that, that rapid pace of change, you step in and say, hey, we got to create systems that adapt faster, right?
You nailed it.
Okay. So then how do you make that applicable to like any company, and what company specifically would that be most applicable to? Whenever you talk about rapid change, interruptions, disruption in the marketplace because of new innovations, what exactly are the fires we're trying to prevent or put out, in this scenario?
Fires being one of them. So, I mean, when you look at deferred maintenance from maybe if it's an electrical or utility company, before a fire happens, they know that they're supposed to be trimming those electrical wires, right? But instead of doing that, they don't, and then people die and billions of dollars are cost. So organizations where I've been able to make the most impact are usually mid-sized companies because they're kind of right in that growth stage where they're flexible and agile enough and they haven't put all the procedures in place. And then that kind of sets them up for growth. It's also mid-sized companies grow very quickly. And so they don't really take the time to kind of make those changes. But it's applicable across organizations, universities, and governments. The bigger the organization, obviously, the more calcified they become and the less susceptible or less likely they are to change. And so
Be affected by those rapid changes.
yes, so it's a yin and yang kind of thing. It's like you can build the stability and you can institutionalize and become resistant to change. But at that pace, if you don't build in the agility, it becomes an underlying risk. So that's kind of like the overall arching. So it doesn't have to be a specific domain, really. It's really just how we build the system from the ground up. So sometimes if you're getting into like coding or something, it actually is easier to start over. But with the government, you know, we don't have that option.
So what specifically does your company, I'm not gonna take a bunch of questions, but what specifically does your company do to help that company adapt to those changes in a rapid rate that are having the disruptions? What specifically, like, I mean, it's like advisory basically, right?
Yeah. So listening, interviewing people on the ground, identifying key personnel, and saying, hey, you have this person doing this at this department. They have a lot of potential. You know, they have a risk of leaving, or saying, hey, your data management is messy. And if you ever want to change your CRM, you need to go and actually figure out those specifics, because now you're tied into Salesforce and you have to pay them every month. And when they raise their cost, you're stuck because you didn't do the maintenance on the back end to make that infrastructure flexible. And this is just, it can go on and on and on.
It seems to me you just need one good client that you can show these results and the effectiveness of the deep intricacy of what you do.
Yeah.
And then sell the crap out of that.
Yeah,
You know?
and I've done it, but then people are still like, okay, well, like the last engagement I did was a CRO, and they're still like, okay, well, that works for CROs, and I'm like, no, it works for every company. I mean, and the hard part about it is no executive, no external facing materials, and what we talked about in the last presentation. No one will tell you what their pain points are, and that's a vulnerability thing, and that's okay. But I can't cold call people and assume I know what's happening behind their doors. I have to be there in the room, listening and understanding, talking to people and saying, hey, what's your biggest workflow friction and what would make your job easier? And, you know, there's always a
Okay.
distance between.
I got an idea for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
The aftermath of crashes, you could be the guy that's like, this is where they went wrong. And I can break it down to a science, what they did wrong and how it's preventable. Like you see the fires that come out, that's a sell point. You go like, hey, this is where they went wrong. And I can break it down to a science, what they did wrong and how we could prevent it. And just have a couple of examples like that and you can explain it. I don't know, maybe that's a way to get into it.
Yeah, and that's how I approach everything. I mean, but I'd have to have like the full history and like case studies. I mean, I do have a case study, but it's like it goes really deeper that because I have a background as a scientist, so I'm very much, you know, geared towards that. But it just takes getting more opportunities and more work so I can show it has applications in different fields. But yeah, thank you.
Jeremy here, kind of back to what I said in the last one too, sales is a disguise, right? So you're asking where the conversation's taking place. You have to Trojan horse your way into those. No company's ever put on LinkedIn, hey, we're sucking at this. You know, you've got to get them to say that themselves. So you've got to start having conversations and asking, one, you got to figure out, which you already do, it's having mid-sized companies that are rapidly expanding, they're growing, they're not making the changes to support their growth. So find companies that have tripled revenue year over year for 3 years. So you know that's a company you want to go after. Now, what executive do you want to go after? COO, CIO, COO, CRO? Figure them out and then go have a conversation with them and ask them what's going well. Say, hey, talk to me a little bit about your processes and all that. Yeah. And through that conversation, you'll find your entry point. And then once you have your entry point, you get in and you say, hey, well, if I may, X, Y, Z.
Is that a guarantee?
Never know.
So I've done a lot of that. I'm a big research guy looking at business journals and reports from basically here, Colorado, Nebraska, Missouri, and then the other one, Oklahoma. And I've done that and I've tried I can't walk in, you know, it's 10 years ago when I would go look for jobs, I could just show up and say, hey, let me go talk to somebody. I have thrived in university environments because a lot of academics have an office and I know how to get there and I can just show up and talk to them. The type of access doesn't work for organizations anymore. And with the amount of cold emails and deferments of how that works, I've had trouble approaching that, but I am still very green in that area. So if you have any specific strategies, I'd be happy to talk about it.
My first thing is kudos to whoever put these two presenters together because they mesh really, really well.
Good job, Tron.
Because you're back to, like you said, in her presentation, it was, you don't push your way in, find their pain point and then have them, and I can see we're in your environment in the middle and growing environments, that's hard to find. But again, that's what it comes down to is, how do you fund anticipation? It's like, how do you find the basic pain points that are generally there? And you identified a few in communication between departments and stuff like that. And if you can find ways to sell a pain point or two of that, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's nobody wants to fund, we might have a fire, we might not. But if you know that in any growing company, this kind of communication or this kind of coordination or this kind of is a problem, because it is.
Yeah.
Then that's an easier thing to identify and approach people with than, we're gonna put out a fire before it happens.
Yeah.
Hi, Taylor, back here. Am I allowed to say that I'm a customer of yours? As a very proud customer, is that allowed? Okay, as a very proud customer, for our business and what John and I do, it didn't really feel like a fire, but what you're able to get back in your contractors that you work with, your mentors, for me was just more time with my family. When I get those fires, when I get those people calling me and saying, hey, Taylor, I need this maritime innovation strategy, proof, concept, everything done. Like, I'm staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm getting that done. And so to be able to provide that data layer and sort of those quick action movements to ensure that those opportunities can be capitalized has been like the coolest thing about working with you. As a small business owner, we don't have a huge team. And so, yeah, that's just been my experience, is like view the ability to view it as a scientist rather than just like, I feel like that makes sense. So like everybody else should feel like that, right? Not at all. So like putting that assurance behind really what we do and that validation. So yeah, I think this is phenomenal. It's very complex and hard to understand. But once you get in, it's definitely impactful. So customer.
Thank you.
10 out of 10 stars on Yelp.
My name is Jamil. This is my first time being here, but
Welcome.
I really like what you're doing right here. I personally, I run an art museum. So I can see like this being incorporated in what I do. But I want to go back to this last thing that you're saying, the critical conversations. I think you already know what that is. I don't think you need to have people, you don't need to earn a seat at the table. You've already made a table. People need to come to you. So you need to ask the question of, how do I get people to come to me? Because you have something very specialized and something very, I don't know the word I'm looking for, I forgot. I'm getting old, sorry. But you have something very specialized here that you can use. And this doesn't need to earn a seat at anybody's table when you've already made one. So that's all I have.
So apparently this is the day of synchronicity because mine follows exactly on what he just started. I think you need to work both ends toward the middle. This gentleman who's going to help you get into the rooms you want to be in. And then I think you need to prep your TEDx talk. And I think you need to be at conferences that specialize, that the majority of people at those conferences are middle-sized businesses. And you need to have, somewhere in this, we're gonna have to watch the video. Somewhere in this, I heard the title of your book in your TED Talk.
I've got a few titles.
But just lean into that, become the expert. And it's a pain in the butt. And I know it feels like you're burning energy on something that's not gonna be worth it. But I think he's right. I think you've got to be out in the world speaking and talking and teaching so that people go, they're in the seat and they're not feeling vulnerable, they're feeling hidden because you're talking and they're hidden. But the thought comes into their head, oh, that's a fire. And they come to you.
Thank you, Jen.
I would be interested, sorry, over here. I'd be interested to know what kind of tools and processes do you have? Because a lot of times, especially for us, we're so unique. They sell the service for us. So do you kind of feature those unique tools and what separates you and how you use those tools and processes versus others?
No, I mean, everything is just going to be engagement specific. So one of the tools I use, which is some soft code for VPA for the CCO I was working with to basically kind of coordinate their RACI, which is the responsible, accountable, consulted and informed chart to actually make more sense with how their client lifecycle worked. So it was a visualization tool that says, hey, if we're plugging in this part, because what was happening is they'd have one intake from the client, and then that required about 4.6 actions from the company. So their RACI itself was creating just a very complicated information flow. It made the client have so many different heads they had to contact. And so by just kind of tuning it and showing them and saying, hey, if your client life cycle is a clock, because when they come in from the BD team, you go to operations and they finish up with finance, your RACI doesn't look like that. Your RACI looks like it's going every direction, and the client feels that, and it's just not a good client experience when it comes to cohesion. So that, I mean, that's just one, but I build just a lot of tools, I guess, for myself, and depending on what I'm constrained by inside an organization, what their software already looks like, it's usually just kind of something small that can make a big difference when it comes to, what's actually going on.
We still have a lot of people with questions. We're running low on time, so let's try to get one more in. And maybe if it's quick, we can get another one.
Hi. So have you thought of doing it like a niche? I think because if you're saying all small businesses, I think it's very wide. Maybe you need to start with a niche, like maybe that lady where she was saying for contractors, because then you can talk about their pains. And even if you're going to say small businesses or medium-sized businesses, there are different conferences for mortgage, banking, supply chain, because if you have a niche, you can talk to their pain and then go from there.
Yes, I mean, it's still working on the communication aspect and the specialization. I mean, there's a lot involved in that, and it takes a lot of effort and minimization and actual work. And I understand that, I've got to be a square to get in the square hole. But I'm just not going to do that. I've tried it for a year, and what people want me to do when it comes to just giving me Excel spreadsheet and doing business analytics, it's fine and it pays decent, but that's not the change I'm looking to pursue. So the clients I'm after are people who are ready to actually address what I've talked about in my talk, not just say they want to do Band-Aid issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Jacob,
John.
we have one final question for you. What can we as a community do for you?
Just keep me in mind if you ever have a problem. And like I said, it doesn't matter what it is, but if you have information, data, or context and you're building something, or you just want to talk things through, I have a background, a wide variety of things, and I'm happy to engage and just see where it goes. So
wonderful. Thank you very much. And you can connect with Jacob up there on the QR code, and then also we'll be here for about another hour once we close up here. So if you are interested in presenting, you can scan the QR code or go to 1millioncups.com. At the very top, there is a present button. If you scroll down, it'll take you to the application there. You just saw it today, and you heard me earlier today say how I'm always just blown away by the audience. Again, today, this was just fantastic. The questions, the advice is just always amazing. So thank you all for coming. We have this room for about one more hour. Thank you very much.